I never thought I'd have to run away from the man I once trusted. The sound of my baby's cries echoed through the silent room, but just moments later, I felt Rowan's hand grab my hair, yanking it back. Before I could react, a sharp slap hit my face, leaving me stunned and tearful. "This is for your own good, Emma," he muttered coldly. Everything I once believed in seemed to collapse in that moment. Could I ever live in this house again? Would I be able to keep my family safe? The room was eerily quiet, save for the sharp sound of my baby's cries. And then, without warning, I felt a sudden, painful tug on my hair. Before I could even react, Rowan, my husband, jerked my head back, slapping me across the face with force. A wave of pain surged through my cheek and my vision blurred with tears. I tried to steady myself, my hands instinctively clutching my son, pulling him closer as if to shield him from this. My heart thudded in my chest, a mix of fear and disbelief swirling within me. "This is for your own good, Emma," he muttered, his voice cold and devoid of any compassion. I couldn't grasp how everything had unraveled so quickly. I'm Willow, 30 years old and a new mother. It's a roller coaster of emotions, exhilarating and overwhelming in equal measure as I navigate the complexities of raising a newborn. The first days at home with my baby were a mix of joy and exhaustion. While I was thrilled to have my son, I hadn't fully understood how challenging it would be to recover from childbirth, manage the house, and take care of my baby all at once. The house was far from perfect. Laundry piled up, dishes lingered in the sink, and I struggled to carve out a moment for myself, consumed with meeting my baby's needs every minute. One afternoon, while I rocked my crying son in my arms, the doorbell rang. I hadn't been expecting anyone, so I was surprised to see my mother-in-law Lavender standing at the door. As she entered, her eyes swept over the disarray, scattered toys, clutter everywhere, and the dishes still piled high in the kitchen. It wasn't how I had hoped she would see our home, but with everything going on, tidying up had been the last thing on my mind. Lavender's gaze fixed on me, and I could feel the judgment in her eyes, mixed with concern. "I thought I'd come by to check on you," she said, stepping over a stray toy on the floor. "Ashton mentioned you might need help." "Thanks, Lavender," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, though my nerves were frayed. "Things are just a little hectic right now, but we're managing." Lavender didn't seem convinced. She moved into the kitchen, the sound of the unwashed dishes clinking together amplifying my discomfort. "It seems like you need more than a little help," she said, her tone sharp. "This place is a mess. Is this how you plan to raise my grandson?" Her words pierced me, and in that instant, a surge of frustration, sadness, and anxiety flooded through me. I had been giving everything I had to keep it together, but right then, it felt like I was failing in every way. "I'm doing the best I can," I answered, clutching my son tighter as if protecting him from her judgment. Lavender let out a long sigh, clearly unimpressed. "Willow, being a mother is about priorities, and right now, it doesn't look like you've got your priorities straight." Before I could respond, Ashton entered, sensing the tension in the air. He stepped in quickly, trying to ease the situation. "Mom, Willow's doing an incredible job," he said, defending me. "It's been tough, especially with the baby not sleeping well." But instead of diffusing the tension, Lavender's attention shifted to Ashton. Her voice grew more serious. "You need to help her see what's important here. It's not just about cleaning the house, it's about responsibility. She's not meeting the family's standards." I could see Ashton was caught in the middle. He looked at me, then back at his mother, unsure of what to say. "Mom, let's not do this right now. Willow is still recovering." But Lavender cut him off. "That's exactly the time when discipline needs to be taught," she said, her voice rising. "If she learns to manage things now, she'll be better off in the future. You can't be too easy on her, Ashton." I was stunned when Ashton hesitated and then finally said, "Maybe you're right, Mom. Maybe Willow does need to learn the hard way." Hearing those words from my husband felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe he would side with his mother. especially when he had seen how hard I was trying. Lavender gave a firm nod as if she had won the argument. She pushed Ashton toward me, saying, "Show her that this kind of behavior can't be tolerated." In that moment, I felt completely overwhelmed. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion or the mess around the house. It was the feeling of being judged and misunderstood by the people who were supposed to support me. Motherhood was already hard, and I was doing my best. But it felt like nothing was enough for Lavender. That day made me realize how important it is to have a support system that understands what new mothers go through. It's not just about keeping the house clean or meeting family standards. It's about doing your best even when things feel overwhelming, and having people who lift you up instead of tearing you down. I barely had time to react before Ashton grabbed my hair, roughly pulling me toward him and slapped me hard across the face. The sound echoed through the room, loud and shocking. It was a moment I'll never forget, a line that should never have been crossed. I held our baby boy close, his cries mixing with the sound of my racing heartbeat. "Ashton, what are you doing?" I managed to ask through tears. The pain from the slap was nothing compared to the pain of betrayal. I couldn't believe this was happening. "This is for your own good, Willow," Ashton said, his voice flat and empty. He didn't even look me in the eyes. "You need to learn." The room fell silent. The only sound was the soft whimpers of our son. Ashton glanced at me, his face showing a mix of frustration and embarrassment, but it didn't feel like an apology. Lavender, his mother, stood there with a stern expression, not saying a word, but her presence alone was enough to make things worse. She didn't move, didn't flinch. She just stood there watching, as if she had expected this to happen. What was meant to be a visit for support had twisted into something entirely different. Instead of comfort, I was met with judgment, and now, a slap that shattered everything I thought I knew about family. It felt as though the very foundation of my world was collapsing. As Lavender made her way to the door, she whispered something to Ashton. I couldn't catch all of it, but the smugness in her expression and the worry in Ashton's eyes told me everything I needed to know. The air between us had turned cold, and I could feel it settling deep into my chest, a heavy weight I couldn't shake. That night, after the storm of emotions had passed, I rocked my son to sleep, trying to calm both him and myself. But the dread clung to me, refusing to let go. What was supposed to be a loving family now felt like something foreign, a place of judgment where I was put on trial and found wanting. It was as if I was failing them, no matter how hard I tried. As I held my son close, a decision began to take shape in my mind. I needed to leave, not just for my own safety, but for his as well. The house that once felt like a home now felt more like a prison, built by the very people who were supposed to love and protect us. I realized I couldn't raise my son here, not with Ashton's actions and Lavender's ever-present influence looming over us. He had crossed a line, and I couldn't trust him anymore. I couldn't bear to sleep next to Ashton that night. Instead, I took my baby to the nursery, the small room that had become my sanctuary these past few weeks. As I sat in the rocking chair, my son in my arms, the events of the day played over and over in my mind. Each time the memories resurfaced, the pain and betrayal only deepened. I knew without a doubt that I couldn't stay. The next morning, with Ashton at work and Lavender thankfully gone, I picked up the phone. Rebecca, a close friend who had offered help before, answered quickly. "Becca, it's me. I need the help you offered," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and resolve. "Say no more, Willow," Rebecca replied calmly. "I'll be there today with my truck. We'll move your things to my place until you figure out your next steps." We devised a simple but risky plan. I would pack as much as I could during the day, just the essentials for me and my son. Rebecca would come by in the evening, and we would move everything out quietly before Ashton returned. I knew I couldn't face him again, not after what had happened. It was too dangerous to stay, and I couldn't risk him or Lavender discovering what I was planning. As I packed, my heart raced, but I knew this was the only option. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about my son. He deserved a safe, loving environment, free from violence, control, and manipulation. Leaving was terrifying, but staying would have been worse. This was the beginning of a new chapter 1 where we could both breathe and my son could grow up in peace. I stood still, contemplating the consequences of facing Ashton again. He might try to apologize, or worse, Lavender might convince him to tighten his grip on me. I couldn't let that happen. I knew I had to leave. As I packed, each baby outfit, each toy, felt heavier than the last, weighed down by the memories of a life I had once dreamed of. The life I had wanted with Ashton. But the sharp sting of his slap and Lavender's cold, judgmental gaze reminded me staying wasn't an option anymore. By late afternoon, most of my things were packed into boxes. I hid everything in the garage, trying to stay calm and focused. Rebecca, my best friend, arrived just as the sun began to set. Her arrival felt like a glimmer of hope in what had been one of the hardest days of my life. "Are you ready?" Rebecca asked as she stepped inside, looking at the boxes and bags scattered around. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, holding my baby boy a little closer to my chest. I had to do this for him, for both of us. We moved quickly, loading everything into her truck. We worked silently but efficiently, as if we had done this 100 times before. The last room I packed was the nursery. It had been my little sanctuary, the only place in the house where I had felt safe and at peace. I took one last look around, saying a quiet goodbye to the life I had dreamed of having with Ashton. But I knew now that this dream was over. As we drove away, I watched the house fade in the rearview mirror. A chapter in my life was closing, and though my heart felt heavy, I also felt a flicker of hope. My baby slept peacefully in his car seat, unaware of the big change happening. But finally, I knew he was safe. This was the first night of our new life, a life where fear and manipulation no longer had control over us. When we arrived at Rebecca's place, I felt a wave of relief. Her home was filled with warmth and safety, a stark contrast to the oppressive feeling that had taken over my own home. Being there made me even more determined to make sure Ashton and Lavender couldn't hurt us again. I realized that simply leaving wasn't enough. I needed to ensure that they couldn't twist the story in their favor or ever put someone else through what I had experienced. I started by reaching out to family and friends, pretending I just wanted to catch up. During these conversations, I carefully gathered bits of information, slightly recording any mentions of Lavender's controlling behavior or Ashton's strange willingness to follow her lead. Some people were hesitant to talk, but many hadn't realized how deep Lavender's manipulation ran. Over time, I began to collect text messages, voicemails, and even recorded calls that painted a clear picture of what was really happening behind closed doors. The most valuable piece of evidence came when I managed to record a video of Lavender coaching Ashton on how to control me. Her words made it clear that this wasn't about concern or love. It was about power and control. Once I had gathered enough evidence, I decided it was time to confront them. I chose a family gathering hosted by Ashton's sister. It was a neutral place with plenty of family members present. Some of them had already hinted that they were uncomfortable with the way Lavender dominated the family, so I hoped this would be the right time and place to reveal the truth. On the day of the gathering, I was nervous. My hands shook and my heart raced, but I knew this had to be done. I arrived with Rebecca by my side, her support giving me the strength to go through with it. As I walked into the room, I could feel the tension. People greeted me with quiet murmurs, but everyone seemed to know something was off. Word about Ashton and Lavender's behavior had spread through the family, and even the relatives who lived far away had heard rumors. After the initial greetings, I took a deep breath and prepared myself for what was to come. It was time to show everyone who Ashton and Lavender really were, and to finally take control of my life again. I stood up, my hand shaking, but my voice was steady. "I have something important to say," I began as everyone in the room turned to look at me. I could feel all eyes on me, but I knew this had to be done. "It's about Ashton and his mother, Lavender. and how their actions have affected not just me and my son, but the whole family. Ashton looked shocked, and I could see the fear in his eyes as he tried to stop me. "Willow, let's not do this here," he said, trying to interrupt. But I didn't back down. "No," I replied, pulling out my phone. "This is not just a personal issue." I connected my phone to the Bluetooth speaker, and the room fell silent. The recordings began to play. Lavender's cold, controlling voice telling Ashton how to handle me, and Ashton's hesitant agreements. It was all there, plain as day, their plans to fix my behavior. The reactions in the room were immediate. Some people looked shocked, others disgusted. Ashton's aunt, who had always been kind to me, looked heartbroken. She turned to Lavender, her voice shaking. "Is this true, Lavender? Were you really forcing Ashton to do this?" Lavender's face turned red with anger and fear. "These are taken out of context," she snapped, trying to defend herself, but it was too late. Ashton's cousin, who had been quietly observing until now, stood up. "No, they aren't out of context. We've seen signs of this for years, but we didn't want to believe it." That moment changed everything. Family members began to speak up, sharing their own experiences with Lavender's controlling ways. Slowly, a picture emerged of a woman who had manipulated her family for years, hiding behind the role of a caring mother. Ashton sat there in silence, looking pale and overwhelmed, finally seeing the truth about his mother's control over his life. As the family meeting turned into a heated discussion about Lavender's influence, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. The truth was out. It wasn't just me who saw it now. Everyone in the room knew. The family who had been under Lavender's control for so long finally saw her manipulations for what they were. After the confrontation, there was a quiet, somber feeling in the air. The family, long under Lavender's influence, now had to come to terms with what had been going on for years. The shock was clear on their faces, and it was uncomfortable for everyone to realize how deeply Lavender had affected their lives. For me, the decision to leave Ashton was painful, but it was also necessary. After everything that had happened, there was no going back. As the family began to leave, I gathered my son, who was blissfully unaware of the storm around him. With one last look at the family home, I stepped into the unknown, knowing I was doing the right thing for us. Ashton watched us leave, his face filled with sadness and regret. His voice, once so familiar, now felt distant as he whispered a weak goodbye. I didn't look back. Lavender, on the other hand, faced a much harsher reality. The family that Lavender had once held under her thumb finally saw her for who she truly was. They began to pull away, the weight of the harm her actions had caused becoming undeniable. No amount of her attempts to regain control could change the truth. The evidence from the recordings and the testimonies shared at the gathering had been overwhelming, and no one could ignore it any longer. In the weeks that followed, Ashton reached out to me repeatedly. His messages overflowed with apologies, promises of change, and pleas for forgiveness. But the image of his raised hand and the influence his mother had over him were too ingrained in my memory to forgive so easily. The trust between us had been shattered, and with it, the bond of our marriage. I understood then that this was the closing of one chapter and the painful but necessary start of another. I wasn't just leaving behind a toxic situation. I was beginning a new life, one where I could be free from control and fear, where I could raise my son in an environment built on love and safety. I found a small apartment far from the neighborhood I once called home. It was a fresh start, a place where no one knew my story, and I could leave the past behind. My friend Rebecca stood by me through it all, offering her unwavering support as I began the slow process of rebuilding. My days became simpler, yet filled with purpose. Caring for my son consumed most of my time, but I also focused on putting the pieces of my life back together. The healing process was anything but easy. It was slow, and at times, the pain felt almost unbearable. There were days when the weight of everything I had been through threatened to swallow me whole. But the newfound freedom to make my own choices, to no longer live in fear of manipulation, kept me moving forward. It felt like a fresh start, an opportunity to live on my terms. I began therapy, where I confronted the emotional scars I had carried for so long. I also joined support groups for single mothers, and connecting with others who understood my pain helped me feel less isolated. Slowly, the pieces of who I once was began to come back together. Though I wasn't the same person I had been before, I was stronger now, more resilient. I had learned how to stand up for myself, and most importantly, how to protect my son from any harm. His laughter became my anchor, lifting me through even the darkest moments. Watching him grow and hit new milestones filled me with a sense of purpose and joy, and with each little victory, I felt more hopeful for the future. As he took his first steps and said his first words, I too found myself taking steps toward healing and reclaiming my life. Months passed, and before I realized it, a year had gone by. One evening, after putting my son to bed, I sank into the couch in our cozy living room, surrounded by his drawings and toy symbols of the happy life we were building together. I couldn't help but reflect on how far we had come. The pain of the past still lingered like a shadow, but it no longer held the same power over me. The light of new beginnings now shone brighter, and the support of friends like Rebecca, along with the unconditional love of my son, gave me strength. As I sipped a cup of tea that night, it struck me I was ready to share my story. I started a blog as a space where I could write about everything I had been through. It wasn't just for me, but for others who might be facing similar struggles. I wanted to reach out to those who felt trapped in manipulation or abuse, to let them know they weren't alone. Every blog post I wrote became a step away from the victim I once was, and a step closer to becoming someone who could help others. Reflecting on my journey, I realized I had grown into an advocate. I had found my voice, and now I was using it to speak out against the very control and manipulation I had once endured. My story was one of resilience, a testament to finding strength in the face of adversity. But how far is too far when love and control blur into violence? When does standing up for yourself become an act of rebellion in a relationship built on manipulation and fear? In that moment, as I stood there clutching my baby, the truth hit me harder than the slap. I had been living in denial, convincing myself that Rowan's behavior was just a phase. But it wasn't. He wasn't the man I had married. I was living with a stranger, someone who would rather hurt me than help. The deeper I thought about it, the clearer it became. I couldn't stay. My son deserved more than to be raised in a home where fear loomed at every corner. Could I continue living with a man who had shown me no respect, no compassion? But here's the question. Was leaving the right choice? Should I have stayed and fought for my family or stood up for myself even if it meant leaving everything behind? In my situation, there was no easy answer, only the cold reality that something had to change. Would you have done the same? Would you walk away from someone who was once your world? Or would you try to fight for what you believed was love? Let me know what you think in the comments. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these important conversations going.
Money can't buy peace, but revenge might. That's what I kept telling myself as I stared at the text message burning through my phone screen. 18 years of silence, and now this. Dinner tomorrow? I have something important to tell you. Mom. I'm Harmony, and my mother's definition of important has always been questionable. The last important thing she told me was that she was going out for groceries. I was 12. She never came back. My fingers hovered over the phone. Delete would be the smart choice. That's what my therapist would say, what Ben would advise, what every self-help book on abandonment issues would recommend. But there I was, in my corner office overlooking downtown, letting that message derail my entire afternoon. The Henderson contract needs your signature, Laura said, poking her head through my door. She stopped when she saw my face. You look like you've seen a ghost. Worse. I heard from Linda. Laura's professional demeanor cracked. Your mother? After all this time? I turned my screen toward her. The message glowed like a warning sign. "Are you going?" Laura asked, perching on the edge of my desk. "I shouldn't, but you will," I nodded, hating how well she knew me. "I need to know why now. Why after I've finally built something for myself?" "You mean after you've become successful enough to be interesting?" Laura's tone carried an edge I rarely heard from her. "Your father should know about this." My father. The man who worked double shifts at his bakery to keep me in dance classes after Linda left. Who never said a bad word about her, even when I was screaming and breaking things in our kitchen at age 13. "I'll tell him," I said, though the words felt like stones in my mouth. "After I see what she wants." Laura's face softened. "Want me to come with you?" "No. Whatever this is, I need to face it alone." The rest of the day blurred past in a haze of signatures and meetings. I barely registered the details of the Henderson contract, my mind spinning with possibilities. Was she sick? Dying? Had she finally run out of whatever she'd been chasing when she left us? That evening, I sat in my car outside the restaurant she'd chosen. Some trendy place downtown, the kind that served tiny portions on massive plates. Of course she wouldn't suggest meeting at my father's bakery. That would require acknowledging too much history. My phone buzzed. "Ben, you don't owe her anything," his text read. I typed back, "I know, but I owe myself answers." Inside, the host led me to a corner table. And there she was, looking exactly like the woman who haunted my memories, yet somehow smaller. Her hair was still that artificial shade of blonde, her makeup still perfect. She stood when she saw me, arms opening for a hug I had no intention of giving. "Harmony," she said, my name sounding foreign on her lips. "You look successful." I sat down without touching her. "What do you want?" "Can't a mother want to see her daughter?" "A mother? Is that what you're calling yourself now?" She flinched but recovered quickly. "I deserve that. I know I do. But I'm hoping... Well, I wanted you to meet someone." That's when I noticed the young woman approaching our table from the direction of the restrooms. 19, maybe 20, with Linda's eyes and my father's dark hair. My stomach dropped as understanding dawned. "This is Mia," Linda said, beaming like she was presenting a prize. "Your sister." The world tilted sideways. All these years, I'd imagined her starting fresh somewhere, building a new life. I never imagined she'd built a whole new family. "Half-sister," I corrected automatically, my voice coming from somewhere far away. "And how long have you been keeping this particular secret?" Linda's smile faltered. "Harmony, please. I wanted to tell you so many times." "When? Between abandoning me and replacing me?" Mia slid into the seat beside Linda, watching me with careful interest. "I've wanted to meet you for so long," she said softly. I looked between them, noting their matching necklaces, their easy familiarity. Everything Linda had denied me, she'd given to this girl instead. "Well," I said, reaching for my purse, "now you have." But Linda's next words froze me in place. "We need your help, Harmony. And I promise once you hear us out, you'll understand everything." I gripped my steering wheel, knuckles white, staring at my father's bakery sign, glowing in the evening darkness. The conversation with Linda and her perfect replacement daughter still burned in my throat like acid reflux. Dad needed to know. He deserved to hear it from me, not through small-town gossip. The bell chimed as I pushed through the door, the scent of fresh sourdough wrapped around me like a familiar embrace. But tonight it couldn't calm my racing heart. "We're closing in 10. Dad's voice trailed off when he saw me. He wiped his flour-covered hands on his apron. "Twice in 1 week? Should I be worried?" I forced a smile. "Can't a daughter visit her father?" "Not when she's wearing her power suit at 8 p.m. He studied my face. "What's wrong?" The words stuck in my throat. Instead of answering, I walked behind the counter and started helping him clean, just like I used to as a teenager. The rhythmic motion of wiping down surfaces gave me courage. "Linda's back," I said finally, keeping my eyes on the counter, "and she brought company." The cleaning cloth in Dad's hand went still. "Company?" "My sister." The word tasted bitter. Half-sister. She's 19. The silence that followed was deafening. When I looked up, Dad had aged 10 years in 10 seconds. He gripped the edge of the industrial mixer for support. 19, he repeated, doing the math. So when she left, she was already pregnant. The rage I'd suppressed at dinner bubbled up. She wants something, Dad. They both do. Some kind of help with their real estate ventures. Dad's laugh was hollow. Real estate? That's rich coming from her. What do you mean? He shook his head. Nothing. Ancient history. But there was something in his tone, a bitterness I'd never heard before. The bell chimed again. Uncle Frank walked in, carrying his usual evening paper. He stopped short when he saw our faces. Who died? He asked, then noticed the tension. David. What's wrong? Linda's back, Dad said, with her other daughter. Frank's newspaper crumpled in his grip. That conniving little... He caught himself glancing at me. Sorry, Harmony, but after what she did with those property deals before she left... Frank, Dad warned, but I was already latching on to this new information. What property deals? It's not important now, Dad said quickly. Like hell it's not. I turned to Frank. What deals? Frank looked between us, then sighed. Your mother was more than just a realtor, Harmony. She was running a scheme, convinced several of David's friends to invest in fake development projects. When she disappeared, she took their money with her. The room spun. I steadied myself against the counter. How much? Nearly $500,000, Dad said quietly. I paid most of them back over the years. It's why we had to sell the house. All those double shifts, all those years of living above the bakery. I'd always assumed it was just because we couldn't afford the house after Linda left. Never once had I imagined. And now she's back, I said, pieces clicking into place, asking for help with real estate ventures. History repeating itself, Frank muttered. My phone buzzed. A text from Mia. Mum says you left dinner upset. Can we meet tomorrow? Just us? I showed the message to Dad and Frank. Don't, Frank said immediately. She's Linda's daughter. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But Dad's expression was thoughtful. Or maybe she's like you, Harmony. Maybe she needs to know the truth about her mother too. I typed back a quick agreement to meet, my mind already racing with possibilities. If Linda was planning another scheme, Mia might be the key to exposing it, either as an innocent informant or a willing accomplice. I need to know what they're planning, I said, before anyone else gets hurt. Dad touched my shoulder. Just be careful. Your mother? She has a way of making everything sound reasonable until it's too late. I hugged him, breathing in the familiar scent of flour and coffee. I learned from the best how to spot a con artist, I said. She taught me that lesson the day she walked out. As I left the bakery, my phone buzzed again. Mia had suggested meeting at a coffee shop downtown. Perfect. Right across from my office where Laura could keep an eye on things. This time I'd be ready for whatever game Linda was playing. And if Mia was part of it, well, she'd learned that her big sister hadn't spent the last 18 years learning how to forgive. The numbers didn't lie. I'd been staring at property records for 3 hours, and with each document, the pit in my stomach grew deeper. Linda hadn't just returned to play Happy Families, she'd been systematically shadowing my real estate investments for months. Look at this, I said, pushing my laptop toward Laura. Every property I've shown interest in over the past year has a competing bid from shell companies, all traced back to her. Laura leaned closer, frowning. That can't be coincidence. It gets worse. I pulled up another screen. Remember that deal I lost last month? The Victorian conversion project. Someone spread rumours about structural issues that didn't exist. Guess who toured the property the day before? Mia, Laura whispered, connecting the dots. My phone buzzed. Speaking of the devil, another text from my perfect little sister. Coffee was great yesterday. Mum's excited about your interest in our development project. I hadn't shown any interest. I'd spent the entire coffee meeting deflecting questions about my business while Mia probed for information about my investment strategy. I'd been so focused on getting intel from her, I hadn't realized she was doing the same to me. The office door opened. Ben walked in, his face grim. "You need to see this." He handed me his tablet, open to a local business newsletter. My stomach lurched at the headline, "Rising Star Developer Faces Questions About Project Viability." "They're quoting anonymous sources," Ben said quietly, "claiming you've been inflating property values and misleading investors." The room tilted sideways. These were the exact accusations that had destroyed Linda's reputation before she disappeared, the same crimes she'd actually committed. "She's trying to make me look like her," I said, my voice strange in my ears. "Turn me into the villain of her story." My phone rang. "Dad, are you watching the news?" "Just saw it." "Frank's been asking around. Linda's been meeting with some of her old victims, claiming she has evidence you're running the same schemes she did. Says she came back to make things right." The laugh that escaped me didn't sound human. "Make things right? By destroying me?" "Harmony," Laura interrupted, staring at her phone. "Your Henderson project just lost its primary investor." The walls closed in. The Henderson project was my biggest deal yet, a mixed-use development that would have cemented my reputation. Without that investor, "I need air," I muttered, heading for the door. The elevator opened before I reached it. Mia stepped out, looking perfectly innocent in her university sweater and jeans. "Harmony, I was just coming to—" "Save it." I grabbed her arm, pulling her into the empty conference room. "How long have you been helping her sabotage me?" "What? Don't lie to me." I slapped the business newsletter on the table. "Anonymous sources, property tours, competing bids. You're not here to know me, you're here to destroy me." Something shifted in Mia's expression, a hardness I recognized from Linda's face. "You don't understand. Mom said what? That I deserved it? That I had this coming? That you stole everything from her?" Mia's voice cracked. "Her clients, her reputation, her chance to start over. She said you turned everyone against her." I laughed, the sound sharp as broken glass. "Is that what she told you? Did she mention the $500,000 she stole? The lives she ruined? Ask her about the money Dad spent years paying back. Ask her about—" "You're lying," Mia said, but uncertainty flickered in her eyes. "Am I? Check the court records. They're public. See who's really telling the truth." My phone buzzed again. Another investor pulling out. "Get out," I said quietly, "and tell Linda something for me. Tell her I understand now, why she came back, what she really wants." I stepped closer, watching Mia flinch. "Tell her she taught me well. Everything I know about revenge, I learned from her abandonment." Mia backed away, her composure cracking. "This isn't what I didn't know." "Yes, you did. You just didn't care. Like mother. Like daughter." After she fled, I stood in the conference room, watching my city through the windows. Somewhere out there, Linda was orchestrating my downfall, using my own sister as a weapon. She'd taken everything from me once before. Never again. I pulled out my phone and dialed Uncle Frank. "Remember those records you kept? About Linda's schemes? I need everything. It's time to show Mia exactly who her mother really is." The game had changed. Linda wanted to replay history? Fine. But this time, I'd write the ending. Uncle Frank's box of evidence sat unopened on my kitchen counter while Ben paced behind me. 3 days of staring at it, and I still couldn't bring myself to lift the lid. "You don't have to do this," Ben said, touching my shoulder. "We could still go to the authorities." I shrugged off his hand. "With what? Circumstantial evidence and an 18-year-old scandal." "Then walk away. Sell the Henderson project, start fresh somewhere else." The suggestion hit like a slap. Run away? Like she did? The doorbell rang before Ben could respond. Laura stood outside, clutching her tablet. Her face told me everything. "How bad?" I asked, letting her in. "The Henderson investors are filing a lawsuit. They're claiming fraud, saying you misrepresented the property's value." She paused. "Linda's name is on the filing, as an expert witness." The room tilted. I steadied myself against the counter, accidentally knocking Frank's box. Papers spilled across the floor. Old contracts, newspaper clippings, photographs. One caught my eye. A younger Linda standing beside a man I didn't recognize, both smiling at some construction site. The date stamp, 3 months before she left us. "Who is that?" Ben asked, picking up the photo. My phone buzzed. Mia. I ignored it. "There's more," Laura said quietly. "The lawsuit mentions specific dates and transactions. Things only someone with inside access would know." The implications hit me like ice water. I thought of all the times I'd left Mia alone in my office during our coffee meetings. How many documents had she photographed? How many files had she accessed? "I trusted her," I whispered. "Even knowing who her mother was, I still—" "Harmony." Ben's voice was strange. He held up another photo from Frank's box. "You need to see this." The same man from the first photo, but newer, standing next to Mia at what looked like a graduation ceremony. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. My phone buzzed again. This time I answered. "Stop digging," Mia said without preamble. "Mom says—" "Who is he?" I cut her off. "The man in the photos. Your father." Silence. "Did Linda tell you how she met him? That he was Dad's business partner before she destroyed everything?" "You don't understand," Mia started, but I was already pulling more papers from the box. Property deeds, investment contracts, all transferred to him right before she left. She didn't just steal from Dad's friends. She set him up to take the fall while she ran off with his partner. "That's not—" "And now you're doing the same thing to me." The laugh that escaped me was bitter. "Like mother, like daughter, right? We needed to know if you were like her," Mia's voice cracked. "Dad said she probably taught you her tricks, that you'd try to take everything." I hung up. The room spun as everything realigned. We'd all been playing different games. Linda wanted revenge. Mia wanted validation. And I'd been so focused on protecting myself, I'd missed the bigger picture. "The lawsuit," I said to Laura. "Who's the presiding judge?" She checked her tablet. "Judge Marcus Reynolds." "Reynolds?" I repeated. Another piece clicked. Dad's old golf partner. The one who helped cover up Linda's crimes to protect the community's reputation. Ben grabbed my arm as I reached for my keys. "Where are you going?" "To see my father." I shook him off. "There's more to this story. Dad protected Linda back then, convinced Reynolds to bury the evidence. I need to know why." "You're not thinking clearly," Laura warned. "This is exactly what they want, to make you act rashly, make mistakes." "No." I gathered the scattered papers, my mind racing. "They want me to run, to hide, to be ashamed, like Dad was. But I'm not him." I turned to Ben and Laura, seeing the concern in their faces. I've spent my whole life trying not to be Linda, but maybe that's been the problem. Maybe it's time to beat her at her own game. "What are you going to do?" Ben asked quietly. I picked up the photo of Linda and her lover, the man who'd helped destroy my family once and was trying to do it again through his daughter. "I'm going to make them wish they'd never heard of the Henderson Project." I grabbed my keys. "And then I'm going to take everything they have, just like they taught me." The security guard at Linda's office building barely glanced at my borrowed maintenance uniform. Amazing what doors open when you look like you belong. Even more amazing what people leave in their desk drawers when they think no one's looking. Linda's office computer hummed to life. Password protected, of course, but I'd watched Mia type it in during one of our sisterly coffee meetings. Mother's birthday. How touching. "You shouldn't be here." I didn't turn around. "Hello, Mia." "I could call security." "But you won't." I kept scrolling through files. "Because then you'd have to explain why you're here at midnight, too." She moved closer, her reflection in the monitor showing uncertainty. "What are you looking for?" "The truth. For once." I opened another folder. "Like why Judge Reynolds' wife suddenly invested $2 million in your mother's new development company last month. That's confidential. Or why 3 of my former clients received anonymous emails about building code violations that never existed." I swiveled to face her. "Did Linda dictate those emails, or did you write them yourself?" Mia's face hardened. "You don't understand what's at stake." "Then explain it to me, sister." The word tasted like poison. "Explain why you're helping them destroy me." Because you destroyed them first, her composure cracked. Dad lost everything because of your father's lies. Mom had to start over with nothing. I laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet office. Is that what they told you? That Dad was the liar? My phone buzzed. Laura's text. Linda just entered the building. Show me, Mia demanded suddenly. If you have proof they're lying, show me. I pulled out Uncle Frank's file. Bank transfers, property deeds. All moved to your father's name before Linda ran. She didn't start over with nothing. She started over with everything she stole. Mia's hands shook as she read. This could be fake. Like the evidence against me in the Henderson lawsuit. Her head snapped up. Something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, maybe fear. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? The lawsuit claims I falsified property values. Funny how that's exactly what Linda did 18 years ago. Almost like she's following a script. Footsteps in the hallway. Mia's eyes darted to the door. Choose now, I said quietly. Help me expose the truth or go down with them when I do. You're bluffing. You have nothing concrete. I have everything. I turned the monitor toward her, including emails between Linda and Judge Reynolds discussing how to fast-track the lawsuit. Interesting reading, especially the parts about you. The footsteps grew closer. Mia's breathing quickened. They're using you, I pressed. Just like they used Dad. Once they get what they want. Stop. Her voice cracked. Just stop. The door handle turned. Mia moved suddenly, grabbing the files and shoving them into my hands. Backstairs. 3rd floor has a broken security camera. I hesitated. Why? Because I need to know. Her eyes met mine. The whole truth, not just their version. Linda's voice carried through the door, speaking to someone. Mia pushed me toward the emergency exit. Tomorrow, she whispered. The cafe on 4th. Bring everything you have. I slipped through the door as Linda's key turned in the lock. Through the closing gap, I heard Mia's voice, perfectly casual. Oh, hi, Mom. I was just checking those investment reports you wanted. Outside, rain had started falling. I clutched the files to my chest, mind racing. Was Mia truly switching sides or setting another trap? Either way, I had what I came for. Proof of Linda's manipulation of the lawsuit, evidence of judicial misconduct, and something unexpected. A draft email to Mia's father discussing their contingency plan if she proved unreliable. My phone buzzed again. Ben this time. Your father knows what you did. He's waiting at the bakery. I stared at the message, rain soaking through my stolen uniform. Dad had always chosen silence over confrontation when it came to Linda. What would he say now that I was choosing a different path? The files felt heavy in my arms, 18 years of secrets and lies, finally exposed. Tomorrow, Mia would either help me use them or try to bury them again. Either way, there was no going back now. I headed toward the bakery, toward whatever judgment waited there. Linda had taught me about revenge, but Dad had taught me about courage. Time to show them both what I'd learned. The real estate conference buzzed with artificial cheer as I adjusted my presentation slides. Linda sat in the front row, Mia beside her, both wearing identical expressions of polite interest. They thought they had me cornered. The lawsuit had frozen my assets. The Henderson project was in ruins. Even my own father had warned me to back down. They had no idea what was coming. Our next speaker, the moderator announced, Harmony Walsh, discussing urban development trends. I took the podium, my USB drive heavy in my hand. Not my prepared presentation, something much more interesting. Thank you, I said, scanning the crowd. Judge Reynolds in the 3rd row looking uncomfortable. Several of Linda's investors scattered throughout. Perfect. I'd like to discuss something more relevant than market trends. Let's talk about fraud. The first slide appeared. Linda's email to Judge Reynolds about fast-tracking the lawsuit. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Specifically, how to orchestrate a hostile takeover using false litigation and judicial misconduct. Linda's smile froze. Mia half rose from her seat, but Linda grabbed her arm. 18 years ago, this woman stole $500,000 from our community. I clicked to the next slide. Bank records, property transfers, all bearing Linda's signature. Now she's back to do it again, using the same playbook. "This is slander," Linda called out, but her voice shook. "Is it?" Another click. The email about Mia being unreliable appeared. "Even your own daughter isn't safe from your schemes." Mia's face went white. She turned to Linda, who was already reaching for her phone. "Security!" Linda snapped into it. "Now!" I kept going, racing against time. The Henderson lawsuit? Orchestrated by Linda and Judge Reynolds to... The microphone cut out. Security appeared at both doors. "You're making a mistake," Linda said, her voice carrying in the sudden silence. "That evidence was obtained illegally. Breaking and entering computer fraud. She's the criminal here." The crowd shifted, uncertain. I saw investors exchanging glances, reporters scribbling notes. "Ask her about the money," I challenged. "Ask her where it really went. Ask Judge Reynolds about those offshore accounts." "Enough!" The judge stood abruptly. "This is a private business matter that..." "That what?" Mia's voice cut through the chaos. She stood, trembling. "That you're trying to cover up. Again?" Linda's eyes widened. "Mia, sit down." "No." Mia pulled out her phone. "I recorded everything. Your meetings, your plans, what you really wanted from this lawsuit." The room erupted. Linda lunged for Mia's phone, but she was too late. The recording was already playing, her own voice filling the conference hall. "Once we destroy her reputation, everything she built becomes ours, just like last time." Security reached me as Judge Reynolds stormed out. One of Linda's investors was already on his phone, looking furious. Cameras flashed. "You're under arrest," the officer said, producing handcuffs. I didn't resist. I'd known this was coming. Sometimes you have to sacrifice everything to win. "Wait," Mia pushed through the crowd. "I have evidence that she's telling the truth. Linda forced me to..." "Don't." Linda's voice was ice. "Remember who you are, whose daughter you really are." Mia faltered. In that moment of hesitation, I saw 18 years of manipulation at work. She was just as trapped as I had been. The handcuffs clicked shut. As security led me out, I caught glimpses of the aftermath, reporters swarming Linda, investors demanding answers, Mia standing alone in the chaos, looking lost. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably Ben or Laura, warning me it was too late, or Dad saying he'd told me so. It didn't matter now. Outside, rain fell again. Fitting. The officer guided me toward his car while photographers called my name, asking for comments. "Was it worth it?" Linda's voice carried across the parking lot. She stood under an umbrella watching my arrest with something like satisfaction. "Destroying yourself just to expose me?" I turned to face her one last time. "You taught me well, Mum. Sometimes revenge is worth any price." The police car door opened. As I ducked inside, I caught a final glimpse of Mia through the conference centre windows. She was staring at her phone, still holding the evidence that could save or damn me. The door slammed shut. Through the rain-streaked window, I watched my carefully built world crumble. But in the ruins, I saw something else. The first cracks in Linda's perfect facade. Sometimes you have to burn everything down to build something true. The holding cell door opened with a metallic screech. I expected another detective. Instead, Mia stood there, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "You have 5 minutes," the guard said. I stayed seated on the bench. "Come to gloat?" "To explain," Mia's voice trembled. "About the recordings. Save it. I saw your true colours at the conference." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You saw what Mum needed you to see. Just like everyone else." Before I could respond, the cell door opened again. Linda swept in, immaculate despite everything, that familiar artificial smile plastered on her face. "Family reunion," she said. "How fitting." Mia stiffened. I noticed her thumb moving over her phone screen, but Linda's attention was fixed on me. "You really thought you could beat me at my own game?" Linda's smile hardened. "I taught you everything you know about revenge, remember?" "Not everything." I met her gaze. "Dad taught me about patience." "David," she laughed. "That weak man who couldn't even protect his own investments." "That man," Mia interrupted. Who paid back every penny you stole? Linda's head snapped toward her daughter. What did you say? I found the records. Mia's voice strengthened. In your office that night. The real ones, not the fake story you fed me about Dad stealing everything. You went through my private files? Like mother, like daughter. Mia's laugh was bitter. Isn't that what you always say? Something shifted in Linda's expression. A crack in the perfect mask. Whatever you think you found, I found the truth. Mia held up her phone. And so did they. The cell door opened again. 2 FBI agents stepped in, followed by Dad and Uncle Frank. Linda Walsh, one agent said, we have some questions about your recent financial activities. Linda's composure slipped for just a second. This is ridiculous. I'm the victim here. She's the one who... Who what? Mia pressed play on her phone. Linda's voice filled the cell. Once the lawsuit discredits her, transfer everything to the Cayman account. Judge Reynolds will make sure... Linda lunged for the phone. Mia dodged, backing toward the agents. I recorded everything, Mom. Every meeting, every threat, every lie. You ungrateful little... What? I stood finally. Disappointment? Traitor? That's my role in this story, remember? The charges against Ms. Walsh are being dropped, the second agent announced, in light of new evidence. Linda's perfect mask cracked completely. You planned this? Both of you? No, Mia said quietly. You did. The moment you decided to use me against my own sister. Dad stepped forward, looking older than I'd ever seen him. It's over, Linda. Just like last time. Nothing's over. Linda's eyes darted between us all, calculating. I still have the offshore accounts, the connections. Frozen, Uncle Frank said. Along with Judge Reynolds' assets. Turns out the FBI is very interested in judicial misconduct. The first agent produced handcuffs. Linda backed away, her designer heels clicking on concrete. Harmony. Her voice changed, softening to the mother I barely remembered. You don't want this. I'm still your mother. No. I felt 18 years of pain crystallize into clarity. You're just the woman who taught me what not to become. As they led Linda away, her threats echoing down the corridor, Mia turned to me. I needed to know the truth. About everything. That's why I kept playing along, recording everything. I know. I studied my sister, really my sister now, not just Linda's weapon. You needed proof, just like I did. Dad cleared his throat. The bakery's still open. If anyone wants coffee. Mia hesitated. I should probably go. My father already confessed, Uncle Frank cut in, trying to save himself once we presented the evidence. The cell door stood open. Beyond it, I could hear Linda's voice fading, still protesting her innocence. Some things never change. Coffee sounds good, I said finally. We have 18 years to talk about. Mia smiled tentatively. And maybe some of those lemon scones you're famous for? Dad's eyes watered. I'll make a fresh batch. We walked out together, leaving Linda's echoing protests behind. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about saving what they tried to destroy, including yourself. The courthouse steps felt colder than they should in September. Linda's sentencing had drawn a crowd, reporters, former clients, curious onlookers. I sat apart from them, watching her being led away in handcuffs, her designer suit replaced by prison orange. She caught my eye as they guided her toward the transport van. For a moment, I saw something unfamiliar in her face. Defeat. Ms. Walsh? A clerk hurried down the steps. They found this while clearing out your mother's office. Given the circumstances, the judge thought you should have it. He handed me a leather-bound journal. The pages were worn, dates spanning back to before I was born. Before Linda became... Linda. Ready to go? Mia appeared beside me, her testimony still fresh in the air. She glanced at the journal. What's that? Maybe the truth. Maybe more lies. I tucked it into my bag unopened. Want to grab coffee? We walked past the media circus, ignoring their questions. Dad's bakery was quiet this time of day, the morning rush long gone. The bell chimed as we entered, and the scent of fresh bread wrapped around us like a shield. Ben looked up from where he was helping Dad with inventory. "How'd it go?" 20 years, I said, plus restitution. Dad's hands stilled on the flour bags. Good. Mia traced patterns in the sugar someone had spilled on the counter. My father took a plea deal. 5 years. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "Don't be. They made their choices." She brushed the sugar away. "We make ours." The journal pressed against my side, heavy with unspoken words. I pulled it out, set it between us. "Together?" Mia asked. I opened to the first page. Linda's familiar handwriting filled the margins, but the voice was different. Younger, scared. "I can't tell David about the baby," I read. "He's already working double shifts at the bakery. Another child would ruin everything we've built." Mia's breath caught. The entry was dated 7 months before she was born. Dad moved closer, his shadow falling across the pages. She never said anything true. I started to close the journal, but something fell out. A photograph, Linda holding infant me, looking nothing like the polished woman we knew. She was smiling, really smiling, flour in her hair, probably from the bakery. "I remember that day," Dad said softly. "She'd been up all night with you teething, but she still came to help with the morning rush." "Before everything changed," I said. "Before she changed herself." Dad touched the photo gently. The real Linda disappeared long before she actually left. The bell chimed again. Laura entered, carrying files. "The Henderson investors called. They want to restart negotiations now that everything's cleared up." "Tell them I'll think about it." I closed the journal. "Some things are more important than business." "Like family?" Mia asked quietly. "Like truth." I pushed the journal toward her. "Keep it. Maybe you'll find answers I couldn't." She shook her head. "Maybe some answers aren't in journals. Maybe they're in what we do next." Dad disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a fresh batch of lemon scones. The same recipe he'd used when I was little, when Linda still smiled with flour in her hair. "Your mother chose her path," he said, setting the plate between us. "But she gave me 2 daughters. That's the only truth that matters now." Ben squeezed my hand under the counter. Outside, reporters still lingered, hungry for statements about Linda's sentencing. But in here, surrounded by the smell of fresh bread and coffee, those headlines felt like someone else's story. I watched Mia bite into a scone, closing her eyes just like I used to at her age. Some things, it seemed, ran deeper than Linda's influence. The journal sat between us, full of Linda's versions of truth. But maybe Mia was right. Maybe the real truth wasn't in those pages at all. It was here, in the choices we made next. "So," I said, reaching for a scone, "tell me about your college plans." Mia smiled, really smiled, and began to talk about her future. Not Linda's version, not her father's, her own. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in destroying what hurt you. It's in building something better from the ruins.
The sound of furniture scraping across hardwood floors stopped me dead in my tracks. My house key hung suspended between my fingers as unfamiliar voices drifted through the front door. Someone was inside my home, my sanctuary, my inheritance, my last connection to my parents. I'm Angela, and until this moment, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. The door creaked open to reveal stacks of cardboard boxes cluttering my normally pristine entryway. The scent of someone else's cooking, heavy with garlic and oregano, had already invaded the space where my mother's signature lavender potpourri used to reign. "Oh, Angela, you're home early," my husband Mark's cheerful voice carried from the kitchen, as if this was just another Tuesday evening. "Come help us get Mom and Dad settled in." My stomach dropped. Mom and Dad, his parents, Linda and Frank. Settled in. The words came out, barely above a whisper. Linda emerged from my kitchen, my mother's kitchen, wearing an apron I'd never seen before, already looking far too comfortable. Mark didn't tell you. Our lease wasn't renewed, and we needed somewhere to stay while we figure things out. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It never did. No, I managed. He didn't mention anything. Frank appeared behind her, carrying what looked like their wedding photo. Just temporary, of course, he said, though he was already eyeing the perfect spot above my fireplace, the same spot where my parents' wedding photo had hung for 30 years. I turned to Mark, who was suddenly very interested in unpacking a box labeled kitchen. Can we talk? Privately. He followed me to the back porch, where I used to spend summers watching Mom tend her roses. The bushes were wild now, untamed since her passing 2 years ago. They lost their apartment, Mark said, before I could speak. The building's being converted to condos. They had nowhere else to go. And you didn't think to discuss this with me first? They're my parents, Angela. What was I supposed to do? Consult your wife? Give me some warning. Anything besides ambushing me with new house guests. It's not an ambush. They need help. Linda's voice carried through the window. Mark, honey, where should I put my good china? These cabinets are so cluttered. My hands clenched into fists. That's my mother's china. We can make room, Mark said quickly. It's just temporary, remember. But I saw it in his eyes. The same look he got whenever his parents needed something. That mixture of guilt and obligation that always ended with him choosing them over me. How temporary? I asked. Just until they get back on their feet. A few months, maybe? A few months. The words echoed in my head as I watched Linda rearranging my kitchen through the window. Frank was already settled in my father's old armchair, remote in hand like he owned the place. I teach online classes from home, I reminded him. I need quiet, space, routine. They'll respect that, Mark interrupted. But we both knew it was a lie. I felt it then, that first crack in the foundation of everything I'd built. This house was my anchor, my inheritance, the last piece of my parents I had left. And now it was being invaded, piece by piece, memory by memory. I need some air, I said, already heading for the gate. Angela, wait. But I was already walking, my phone in hand, texting my sister Sophie. They're here. Mark let them move in, without asking. Her response was immediate. What the actual hell? What indeed? As I walked, Linda's calculating smile played on repeat in my mind. This wasn't just about needing a place to stay. I knew that look. She had plans. And somehow, I'd become an obstacle in my own home. The sun was setting behind the houses, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Somewhere in the distance, a door slammed. In my pocket, my phone buzzed again with Sophie's message. Want me to come over? I typed back, not yet. I need to think. And think I did. About every subtle dig, every backhanded compliment, every time Linda and Frank had tried to undermine my place in Mark's life. Now they were in my house, touching my things, erasing my parents' memory piece by piece. This wasn't just an invasion. It was a declaration of war. 3 days into the invasion, and my office door swung open without a knock. Linda stood there, vacuum cleaner humming in her hands, while I sat frozen mid-sentence during my online design workshop. Sorry, dear, she said, not sounding sorry at all. Just tidying up a bit, don't mind me. 20 students watched through their webcams as I muted my microphone. I'm teaching right now. Oh, this won't take but a minute. The vacuum roared to life, drowning out any possibility of continuing my class. I typed a quick message to my students. Technical difficulties, taking a 5-minute break. Then I ended the recording and stood up. Linda, I explained yesterday that I teach from 9 to 11. These are paid sessions. She switched off the vacuum. Her lips pursed. Well, how was I supposed to remember that? Besides, this house needs a proper cleaning schedule. When was the last time anyone vacuumed under your desk? My mother's voice echoed in my head. Pick your battles wisely, Angela. But Mom never had to deal with Linda. I'll clean my office myself, after class. Nonsense. You're so busy with your little computer job. Let me help. She reached for my desk, shifting papers I'd carefully arranged for today's presentation. My phone buzzed. A message from Tom. "Lunch today? Got that marketing proposal you asked about?" "Actually," I said to Linda, "I have a business lunch. I'll be leaving right after class." Her eyebrows shot up. "Business lunch?" "But I'm making my special meatloaf, Mark's favorite." She emphasized his name like a weapon. Another time. I sat back down, making it clear the conversation was over. She lingered in the doorway, vacuum silent but still present, like a threat. "I suppose some people prioritize work over family," she said finally, shuffling away. I waited until her footsteps faded before reopening my class session. My hands shook as I tried to continue teaching, but the damage was done. The rest of the class felt forced, my usual enthusiasm replaced by a tight knot in my stomach. Later, at the small cafe downtown, Tom listened as I recounted the morning's events. "She's marking her territory," he said, sliding a folder across the table, "like a dog peeing on a fire hydrant." Thanks for that mental image. I flipped through the proposal he'd drafted for my freelance business. "You really think I could make it work, going completely independent? Your current teaching platform takes 40% of your earnings. Go solo, build your own brand, and—" He stopped mid-sentence, staring past me. "Incoming." I turned to see Mark and Frank entering the cafe. My husband's face darkened when he spotted me. "Angela, Mom said you were in a business meeting." "I am." I gestured to Tom and the paperwork between us. "Tom's helping me explore some options for expanding my teaching business." Frank's quiet voice carried unexpected weight. "Sounds expensive. In this economy, stability is key." "Actually," Tom interjected, "Angela's current success rate suggests—" "I'm sure you mean well," Frank cut in, "but family should handle family matters." The way he said family made it clear I barely qualified. Mark shifted uncomfortably. "We should let them get back to their meeting, Dad. We're just grabbing lunch." "Of course." Frank's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Though I'm sure your mother would have loved to see you for lunch, Angela. She went to all that trouble with the meatloaf." They moved to a table across the restaurant, but the damage was done. I could feel Mark's periodic glances, like pinpricks on my skin. "Well," Tom said quietly. That was subtle as a sledgehammer. I stared at the proposal in front of me. "They've been there 3 days, Tom. 3 days, and I'm already losing my mind." "Then maybe it's time to start playing their game." He tapped the folder. "Financial independence is a powerful thing." My phone lit up with a text from Sophie. "Coming over tonight. No excuses. We need to talk." I looked back at Mark, now deep in conversation with his father. 3 days ago, I had a home, a husband who I thought supported me, and a clear vision of my future. Now everything felt like quicksand, pulling me under while Linda and Frank watched from solid ground. "Okay," I told Tom, turning back to the proposal. "Show me how to make this work." Because one thing was becoming crystal clear. In this war, I needed my own ammunition. The bills were spread across my desk like evidence at a crime scene. 2 weeks of Linda and Frank's residence had doubled our utilities, yet somehow I was the only one concerned about the mounting expenses. I heard their voices drift up from the kitchen, thinking they were alone in the house. I'd told them I had a morning workshop, but canceled it after losing 3 students last week due to Linda's cleaning interruptions. "The property values in this neighborhood have skyrocketed," Frank said. "If we sold now—" I froze, pen hovering over my budget calculations. "Mark would never agree," Linda replied. "He's too attached to what Angela wants." "Mark will see reason." The boys always understood the importance of family security. Their voices dropped lower, and I crept to the stairs, my heart thundering in my chest. "Retirement fund won't last forever," Frank was saying. "This house is our best option. We just need to help them see it's for the best." Linda's tone carried that false sweetness I'd grown to hate. "Angela's business isn't stable enough to maintain a property like this anyway." My phone buzzed, Sophie asking if we were still on for dinner. I typed back, "Come now, please." I waited until I heard them move to the back patio before descending the stairs. The kitchen counter held papers they'd left behind: bank statements, property assessments, real estate listings. My hands shook as I snapped photos with my phone. The front door opened, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Mark walked in, home early from work. "Hey," he said, frowning at my expression. "Everything okay?" Before I could answer, Linda bustled in from the patio. "Mark, perfect timing. Your father and I were just discussing some family matters." "Financial matters," I corrected, holding up their papers. "Care to explain why you're researching property values for my house?" The silence that followed felt like a noose tightening. "Now, Angela," Frank began, entering behind Linda. "This affects all of us." "All of us?" My voice cracked. "This is my inheritance, my parents' home, which requires significant maintenance," Linda cut in. "The roof needs work, the plumbing's outdated." "Stop," I turned to Mark. "Did you know about this?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "They mentioned looking into options." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Sophie's arrival saved me from completely falling apart. "What's going on?" she asked, reading the room's tension. "Show her," I told Mark, shoving the papers at him. "Show her how your parents want to sell my home, out from under me." "That's not," Linda started, but Sophie cut her off. "Are you kidding me?" My sister's nursing scrubs still carried hospital antiseptic, but her rage was pure fire. 2 weeks? You've been here 2 weeks, and you're already plotting?" "We're thinking of everyone's future," Frank insisted. "Everyone's future?" I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. "You mean your future, your retirement, your security." "Angela," Mark reached for me, but I stepped back. Just don't." I gathered the papers, hands steadier than I expected. "I need some air." Sophie followed me onto the front porch, where I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. "I have proof now," I whispered, showing her the photos on my phone. "They're not just trying to take over my home. They want to take it away completely." "We should call Tom," Sophie said. "He'll know what legal options." The door opened behind us. Mark stepped out, looking lost. "Can we talk about this? Like you talked to me about your parents moving in?" I asked. "Or about them planning to sell my house?" "They're just exploring options," he repeated weakly. "Options." The word tasted bitter. "Here's an option. They can leave." "Angela, no." Something inside me hardened, like concrete setting. "I'm done being the understanding wife. This is my home, Mark, mine, and I will not let them take it from me." Sophie's hand found mine, squeezing tight. Inside, I could hear Linda's voice rising, probably spinning this into another example of my instability. But for the first time since they arrived, I felt steady, clear, the path ahead crystallizing with terrible certainty. "You should go back inside," I told Mark. "Your parents need you." He hesitated, then turned away. The door closed behind him, with a finality that echoed in my bones. "What are you going to do?" Sophie asked quietly. I stared at my childhood home, at the windows where my mother once hung curtains that Linda had replaced, at the garden my father had tended, now being reorganized by Frank. "Whatever it takes," I answered. "Whatever it takes to make them pay." My laptop screen flickered with another cancellation email. "Fourth student this week." The reviews mentioned unprofessional environment and constant interruptions. 3 months of Linda and Frank's presence had systematically dismantled everything I'd built. A knock at my office door made me flinch. Not Linda this time. Mark stood there, holding papers. "The mortgage payment bounced," he said quietly. I stared at him. "That's impossible. Mom and Dad offered to help." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "They suggested refinancing." The pieces clicked together with nauseating clarity. The mysterious bills, the rising expenses, Linda's smug smile every time she mentioned family contributions. "They're bleeding us dry on purpose," I whispered. "Don't be paranoid." But his voice lacked conviction. "They're trying to help." A text from Tom lit up my phone. "Meeting canceled." Investor backed out after background check. My hands started shaking. Linda had mentioned knowing someone at the investment firm. Just another coincidence. I need to see the bank statements, I said. Mom's already handling it. Our bank statements, Mark, now. He hesitated, then pulled out his phone. They're not letting me access the joint account anymore. Said it was for security after some suspicious activity. The room spun slightly. What suspicious activity? Large transfers to an unknown account. He finally looked at me. They think you're hiding money. A laugh bubbled up, bitter and sharp. They think Do you hear yourself? Footsteps in the hallway announced Linda's arrival. She carried a tray of tea, playing the concerned mother-in-law to perfection. I just heard about your business troubles, dear. Her sympathy dripped like poison honey. Such a shame. But perhaps it's a sign to consider more stable options, like selling my home, like giving them everything they wanted. I need some air, I managed, grabbing my keys. In this state? Linda's voice carried down the hallway. Mark, you can't let her drive when she's so unstable. But I was already out the door, calling Sophie. She answered on the first ring. I was just about to call you. Someone's been asking questions at the hospital about your mental health history. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What? HR got a concerned call about my troubled sister, potentially affecting my job performance. She paused. The caller mentioned your recent erratic behavior and financial irregularities. I pulled into Tom's office parking lot, my vision blurring. He was waiting outside. They're destroying everything, I said as he approached. My business, my reputation. Your credit score too, he added grimly. I did some digging. Someone's been making inquiries, raising red flags, the kind that make investors nervous. They want me desperate. The realization felt like ice in my veins. Desperate enough to sell. Tom's expression hardened. There's more. I found something in the property records. Your parents' mortgage had a clause about maintaining family ownership. If you sell, the proceeds go to a trust, I finished. For future generations. Mom made sure of it, which they'd know if they'd seen the full documents. He met my eyes. Angela, they're not just trying to force you out. They're trying to make you look incompetent enough for Mark to take control of the estate. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Come home. We need to talk about power of attorney. Something inside me shifted, like a key turning in a lock. I thought of Linda's careful manipulations, Frank's quiet pressure, Mark's willing blindness, 3 months of subtle degradation, of carefully orchestrated destruction. I need a lawyer, I said. Tom nodded. Already called one. But Angela, they're not going to stop. This kind of calculated attack. I know. I looked at my childhood home in the distance, where Linda and Frank were probably already planning their next move. That's why I'm going to beat them at their own game. How? I thought of every dismissive comment, every orchestrated failure, every piece of my life they'd systematically undermined. By letting them think they've won, I said, right before I take everything from them. My phone buzzed again. Sophie sending screenshots of the hospital inquiry. The caller's name made my blood run cold. Linda's sister, a psychiatric nurse with access to medical records. The game had changed. They weren't just trying to take my home anymore. They were trying to erase me completely. The neighborhood block party buzzed with conversation and laughter, but I could feel Linda's performance before I saw it. A cluster of my longtime neighbors gathered around her, their expressions shifting from concern to pity as they glanced my way. Of course we're worried, Linda's voice carried across the lawn. The erratic behavior, the financial troubles. Sometimes love means making hard decisions for family. My fingers tightened around my glass. Sophie appeared at my elbow, her face tight with anger. She's telling everyone you're having a mental breakdown, she whispered. That Mark might need to take over the estate for your own good. The glass nearly slipped from my hand as Frank approached our small group, playing his part perfectly. Angela, perhaps you should sit down. You're looking rather unstable. I'm fine. The words came out sharp enough to draw attention. See what I mean? Linda's stage whisper to our neighbor Jane carried clearly. We're just trying to protect her from herself. Mark stood between his parents and me, saying nothing. Always saying nothing. Actually, I said, my voice stronger than I felt, I'd love to hear more about these concerns, Linda. Please, share them with everyone. The party chatter died down. Linda's smile flickered, but held. This isn't the place, dear. We're just trying to help. Like you helped access our bank accounts? The words fell like stones into the sudden quiet. Or how you helped contact my students' parents about my unstable behavior. Angela, Mark stepped forward, reaching for my arm. Don't do this here. I jerked away from him. Why not here? Isn't this exactly where Linda wants to have this conversation? In front of everyone. You're proving their point, he hissed. Just calm down. Calm down, I laughed. And the sound scared even me. While they destroy everything I've built, while they try to steal my home, nobody's stealing anything. Frank's authoritative voice boomed. We're protecting family assets. My family's assets, I corrected. My parents' home, my inheritance. Linda touched her chest, the perfect picture of maternal concern. You see? These paranoid accusations. Mark, honey, perhaps it's time to discuss that power of attorney. The glass shattered in my hand. I barely felt the sting of broken crystal, or the warm trickle of blood. Angela. Sophie moved toward me, but Linda was faster. Oh dear God, she gasped, loud enough for everyone to hear. She's hurting herself. Mark, do something. I'm calling an ambulance, Frank announced, phone already in hand. Don't you dare. My voice sounded strange in my ears, distant and cold. Don't you fucking dare. This is exactly what we were afraid of, Linda said to the horrified onlookers. The mood swings, the aggression. We've tried to handle this privately, but handle this. I stepped toward her, watching her theatrical flinch with detached fascination. Like you handled my business contacts, my bank accounts, my reputation. Angela, please, Mark begged. You're embarrassing yourself. Something snapped inside me. I'm embarrassing myself, while your mother orchestrates my public breakdown, while your father tries to seize control of my home. They're trying to help. Help? I turned to the gathered crowd. Ask them about the trust clause in my parents' will. Ask them why they're so desperate to force a sale they can't profit from. Ask them, that's enough. Frank's command cracked like a whip. Mark, get her inside before she hurts herself again. Mark reached for me, but Sophie stepped between us. Touch her, and I call the police. The tension crackled like lightning before a storm. I looked at Mark, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing my husband's face. Choose, I said quietly. Right here, right now. Choose. He looked at his parents, then back at me. You need help, Angela. Professional help. The last thread of hope snapped clean. Okay then. I pulled my wedding ring off, letting it fall into the grass. I choose too. I walked away from the party, from the whispers and stares, from the ruins of my marriage. Behind me, I heard Linda's performance reach its crescendo. The concerned mother-in-law watching her unstable daughter-in-law's public meltdown. But as I reached my car, I smiled, because Linda had finally overplayed her hand, and now I knew exactly how to destroy her. The restraining order arrived 3 days after the block party. I stared at the legal document, my hands trembling as I read the allegations. Erratic behavior, threats of violence, emotional instability. All carefully documented by Linda, supported by witness statements from concerned neighbors. I wasn't allowed within 100 feet of my own home. They can't do this, Sophie said, pacing my temporary room in Tom's guest house. It's your house. They already did. I watched through the window as rain pelted the glass. Linda's sister provided medical opinions about my deteriorating mental state. Frank's golf buddy judge signed the order. My phone buzzed. Another email from my remaining students' parents, withdrawing from my program. Linda's whisper campaign had worked perfectly. The lawyer says we can fight it, Tom said from the doorway. But it'll take time, money, Money I no longer had access to. Thanks to the emergency financial controls Mark had been granted. For my own protection, of course. Angela? Sophie's voice sounded distant. What are you thinking? I touched the window, tracing raindrops with my finger. I'm thinking about Mom. How hard she fought to keep the house and the family. How I promised her. The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Tom checked his security camera and swore softly. It's Mark. My chest tightened. I can't. You don't have to. Sophie moved toward the door, but I caught her arm. No, let him in. I need to hear what he has to say. Mark looked smaller somehow, standing in Tom's living room. The confident husband I'd known, replaced by this uncertain stranger. They're worried about you, he started. Worried enough to steal my home, my business, my life. He flinched. Nobody's stealing anything. But after your behavior at the party, my behavior? The laugh that escaped me didn't sound entirely sane. Maybe Linda was right about me after all. Tell me, Mark, how should I have behaved while your mother systematically destroyed everything I care about? She's trying to help. Help? I stepped closer, watching him back away. By having her sister fabricate mental health concerns, by turning my neighbors against me, by freezing my accounts. You're not thinking clearly. I've never thought more clearly in my life. I pulled out my phone, showing him the photos I'd gathered, your parents' financial records, the calls they made to my students' parents, the conversations with real estate agents, every step of their plan to force me out. His face paled. Where did you get those? Does it matter? What matters is what I'm going to do with them. Angela, please. He reached for me, but I stepped back. They're my parents. They're not perfect, but they're family, I finished. And I'm not really, never was. That's not fair. Fair? My voice cracked. Was it fair when your mother convinced everyone I was having a mental breakdown? When your father used his connections to freeze my accounts? When you stood there and let them destroy me? Silence stretched between us like a chasm. What do you want? He finally asked. I want my home back. I want my life back. I want... My voice caught. I want the husband who promised to stand by me, not the coward who helped his parents tear me apart. They're filing for divorce, he said quietly. Dad's already drawn up the papers, given your current state. My current state, I nodded slowly. The one they carefully orchestrated. Tell me, Mark, did you know about their plan from the beginning? Or did they convince you along the way that destroying me was for my own good? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Get out, Angela. Get out before I give them real proof of my instability. After he left, I sat in the growing darkness, listening to the rain. Sophie and Tom kept their distance, understanding I needed this moment. My phone lit up with a text from Linda. We're only trying to help you heal. When you're ready to accept that help. I deleted it without finishing. Then I opened my laptop and began typing. If they wanted to paint me as unstable, fine. If they wanted to take everything from me, let them try. But they'd forgotten something crucial about cornered animals. They fight back. Tom, I called out. Remember that dirt you found on Frank's business dealings? Time to use it. The rain kept falling, but I barely noticed anymore. I was too busy planning their destruction. The anonymous email to Frank's business partners took 3 weeks to achieve its intended effect. I watched from across the street as police cars surrounded my home, their lights painting the evening in red and blue. Linda stood on the porch, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. Frank sat in the back of a police car, his face ashen. Mark paced between them, running his hands through his hair. You sure about this? Sophie asked beside me. I touched the manila envelope in my hands. They wanted to paint me as unstable. Fine, let's see how they handle their own carefully constructed world falling apart. The detective I'd contacted earlier spotted me and nodded. Time to move. Walking up my own driveway felt like crossing a battlefield. Linda saw me first, her eyes widening with recognition, then narrowing with fury. You, she hissed. You did this. Did what, Linda? Expose Frank's creative accounting. Or his deals with those shell companies? Mark stepped between us. Angela, don't what? Tell the truth? I held up the envelope. Like the truth about how you and your parents orchestrated my breakdown? Documented everything so carefully. Linda's face paled. Those records are private. Like my medical records? The ones your sister accessed illegally. I turned to the detective. I believe that's relevant to your investigation, Detective Chen. You're destroying this family, Mark said. No. My voice stayed steady, though my hand shook. Your parents destroyed it. You helped them. We were trying to protect you. Stop lying. The words exploded from me. You wanted my house, my inheritance. You couldn't stand that I had something you couldn't control. Linda's composure cracked. We deserved security. After everything we've done for this family. This was never your family's home. I cut in. It was mine, my parents' legacy. Your parents? Linda laughed, high and brittle. Your father was a fool who... The slap echoed across the lawn. Linda's hand flew to her cheek, shock replacing anger. Angela, Mark moved toward me, but Sophie stepped between us. Touch her, she warned, and I'll add assault to the charges. Detective Chen approached, his notepad ready. Mrs. Harrison, about those medical records. Linda's facade crumbled completely. You don't understand, she pleaded. We were going to lose everything. Our savings, our status. Frank promised he could fix it if we just had some capital. The house was never yours to take. I opened the envelope, spreading documents across the hood of the police car. Every step of your plan, every call, every manipulation, every lie, documented as carefully as you documented my instability. Frank's voice carried from the police car. Linda, don't say another word. But she was beyond hearing him. We gave you everything. A husband, a family, support. You gave me nothing, I corrected quietly. You took, you always took. And now, I gestured to the police cars, the gathering neighbors, her crumbling world. Now you lose everything. Please, Mark tried one last time. We can fix this. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and felt nothing but pity. No, Mark, we can't. But you know what? I don't want to anymore. Detective Chen finished his notes. We'll need statements from everyone. I handed him the envelope. Everything you need is here. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence showing how they orchestrated my mental breakdown to seize control of my inheritance. Linda lunged for the envelope, but an officer caught her arm. As they led her toward another police car, she turned back to me, her face twisted with something between hatred and fear. You'll regret this, she spat. You'll end up alone, just like you? I finished. No, Linda, I won't. Because unlike you, I know the difference between having things and having people who truly care. I watched them drive away, Frank in one car, Linda in another, Mark standing lost in the driveway of a home that was never his. Sophie squeezed my hand. You okay? I looked up at my house, my parents' house, standing quiet and strong against the evening sky. No, I admitted, but I will be. The police lights faded into the distance, taking with them the family that had tried to destroy me. I climbed my porch steps alone, finally ready to reclaim my home. And this time, no one would take it from me. The divorce papers lay signed on my lawyer's desk, but it was the other document that held my attention. Frank's handwritten confession, detailing every manipulation, every scheme, every calculated move to destroy me. The DA's offering a deal, my lawyer said. In exchange for Frank's testimony about the financial fraud, they'll recommend minimal sentences. Through the office window, I watched Linda pace the hallway, her designer clothes replaced by something simpler, her makeup unable to hide her exhaustion. Angela, Sophie touched my arm. You don't have to decide right now. But I did. Because Linda had asked to speak with me one last time, and I needed to know what victory really meant. I found her by the window, staring at nothing. She spoke without turning. I used to watch my mother lose everything, she said quietly. Her home, her dignity, her children's respect. I swore I'd never be her. So you became something worse. She flinched. We thought we were protecting our future, Mark's future, by destroying mine, by controlling what we could. Finally, she turned. Do you know what it's like, feeling irrelevant, watching your whole world slip away? I thought of those first weeks after they moved in, how they'd systematically dismantled my life piece by piece. Yes, I answered, I do. Silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. Mark's staying with his cousin, she said finally. He wanted to apologize, but he's still choosing his family. Aren't you? Her gesture encompassed the legal papers, the confession, the wreckage of her life. Choosing your family's legacy over mercy. The word hit like a slap. Mercy. After what you did. We were wrong, she whispered. And for the first time, I heard real regret. So wrong. But destroying us won't bring back what you lost. No. I pulled out my phone, showing her the email I'd drafted to the DA. But this might bring something else. She read it slowly, her hands shaking. You'd advocate for leniency. Why? Because my mother taught me the difference between justice and vengeance. I took back the phone. And because I refuse to let your actions define who I become. The door opened. Frank stood there, looking older than I'd ever seen him. The house, he said roughly. We never told you why we really wanted it. Frank, don't, Linda started, but he continued. It reminded me of my childhood home. The one I lost when my father's business failed. I thought having it would fix everything broken inside me. He met my eyes. I was wrong. I thought of my own broken pieces, of how close I'd come to letting revenge reshape me into something unrecognizable. The DA's office will have my recommendation within the hour, I said. What happens after that is up to you. Linda stepped toward me, hand outstretched, but dropped it when I didn't move. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. I gathered my papers. Just remember this moment the next time you try to take something that isn't yours. Outside, Sophie waited with Tom. You okay? I looked back at the building, where my almost in-laws faced the consequences of their choices, where my almost husband would soon learn of my decision. I kept waiting to feel satisfied, I admitted, to enjoy their downfall. But all I feel is free, Tom finished. And he was right. The weight of revenge had lifted, replaced by something lighter. Not forgiveness, never that, but perhaps understanding. That evening I sat in my mother's garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors she would have loved. The house stood quiet behind me, no longer haunted by Linda's presence or Frank's schemes. My phone buzzed with a message from Mark. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't respond. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. Sophie brought out tea in Mom's old cups, the ones Linda had tried to replace. So what now? She asked. I touched the familiar brick of my home, feeling its strength, its history, its future. Now, I said, I rebuild. But this time, I choose who gets to be part of the foundation. The garden needed work. The roses had withered under Linda's care. But as I watched the last light fade, I knew they'd bloom again, different perhaps, changed by the shadow of what had happened here, but stronger for having survived the storm.
The sound of Mark's hushed voice slithered under our bedroom door at 3 a.m. I lay perfectly still, my heart drumming against my ribs as his words became clearer. I can't talk long. No, she's sleeping. Listen, we need to be careful about this. I'm Eleanor, and until that moment, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I was wrong. The mattress beneath me felt like concrete as I strained to catch every word. Mark paced in the hallway, his footsteps creating a rhythm that matched my racing pulse. Our son Ryan's door creaked. He must have moved closer to avoid waking me. The irony wasn't lost on me. The numbers don't add up, I know. We'll figure something out before the audit. Audit. My fingers clutched the sheets. In 15 years of marriage, Mark had never mentioned any audit. Janet's got my back on this. She'll smooth things over with the board. Of course his mother would be involved. Janet, the woman who'd spent the last decade trying to prove I wasn't good enough for her precious son, the woman who'd criticized everything from my cooking to my parenting, always with that razor-sharp smile. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet silent against the hardwood floor. The hall light cast Mark's shadow through the gap beneath the door, a distorted version of the man I'd married. "Look, I've got to go. Eleanor's been asking questions about the late nights at the office." "Yeah. No, she doesn't suspect anything. She's too busy taking care of her sick mother to notice." My mother, Susan, the woman fighting for her life while I juggled being a wife, mother, and daughter. The woman who'd warned me about Mark's ambition when we first started dating. The conversation ended with a whispered goodbye that felt like acid in my ears. I counted to 30 before sliding back into bed, arranging myself exactly as I'd been when he left. The door opened. Mark's cologne, the expensive one Janet had given him for Christmas, drifted in before him. The bed shifted as he settled in, and I felt his hand brush my shoulder. "Eleanor? You awake?" I kept my breathing steady, fighting the urge to flinch away from his touch. His hand lingered for a moment before withdrawing. Morning arrived with the usual chaos. Ryan bouncing around the kitchen, shoveling cereal into his mouth while I packed his lunch. Mark adjusting his tie in the mirror, the perfect picture of a successful sales manager. "Big presentation today," he announced, kissing my cheek. "Might be another late one." I handed him his coffee, careful to keep my expression neutral. "The third this week?" His smile flickered. "You know how it is during audit season." "Actually, I don't." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Mark's eyes met mine in the mirror, and for a split second, I saw something unfamiliar there. Something cold. "You've seemed stressed lately," he said, turning to face me. "Maybe you should take a break from visiting your mother so much. Janet mentioned she'd be happy to help more with Ryan." The coffee mug trembled in my hand. "I'm fine." "Are you?" His tone was gentle, concerned, the same tone he used when convincing clients to trust him. "You've been different since Susan got sick, distracted, paranoid even." Ryan appeared between us, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Mom, can Lily's mum drive me to soccer practice today, please?" I nodded, grateful for the interruption. Lily had been my best friend since college, the only person who saw through Mark's charm from the beginning. Mark checked his watch. "I should go. Don't wait up." He kissed Ryan's head, squeezed my shoulder, and was gone. I watched through the kitchen window as he backed out of the driveway, his phone already pressed to his ear. The morning sun caught his wedding ring, sending a flash of light across our manicured lawn. That's when I knew, really knew, that everything was about to change. The perfect life I'd built was nothing but smoke and mirrors, and somewhere in the darkness of last night, I'd finally caught the scent of fire. The dinner table had become a battlefield, and Janet's voice was the first shot fired across its polished surface. "Eleanor, dear, you've overcooked the chicken again." She dabbed her lips with a napkin, each movement precise and deliberate. Mark needs proper nutrition, especially with how hard he's working lately. I gripped my fork tighter, watching Mark's face for any reaction. He kept his eyes on his plate, pushing food around like a child avoiding vegetables. "I think it's good," Ryan piped up, mouth full of the allegedly ruined chicken. Janet's smile could have frozen hell. "That's because your palate hasn't been properly developed yet, sweetheart. Perhaps if your mother spent more time in the kitchen instead of running off to visit Susan every day." "Mother," Mark's warning came too late. "What?" "I'm simply pointing out that priorities seem misplaced lately. The house is a mess, dinner is subpar, and poor Ryan barely sees his mother." I set down my fork, the clink against china echoing in the sudden silence. "Ryan sees me plenty, and my mother needs me." "Of course she does," Janet cooed, reaching for her wine glass. "But Mark needs you too, don't you, darling?" Mark cleared his throat. "Actually, I've been meaning to discuss something." He straightened his shoulders, a gesture I'd seen countless times before bad news. "Mother's offered to help more around here, maybe take Ryan after school some days." The chicken turned to ash in my mouth. "I don't need help." "Don't be proud, Eleanor," Janet interjected. Everyone can see you're struggling. Those dark circles under your eyes, the state of the laundry room. I said I don't need help. My voice came out sharper than intended, making Ryan flinch. Mark's hand found mine under the table, but his grip felt like a warning rather than comfort. Honey, we're just trying to help. With the audit at work and everything else. What audit? The question hung between us like smoke. Janet's eyebrows shot up. Oh, hasn't Mark told you? The company's doing a complete financial review. It's been terribly stressful for him. No, I said slowly, watching Mark's face. He hasn't mentioned it. Well, perhaps if you asked about his day more often, instead of always talking about your mother's condition. May I be excused? Ryan interrupted, his plate half full. I nodded, grateful for the break in tension. He disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone with my inquisitors. Speaking of Susan, Janet continued, have you considered a care facility? The strain of caring for her is clearly affecting your domestic duties. The wine glass in my hand trembled. My domestic duties? Eleanor. Mark's voice carried that same gentle warning from this morning. Mother's just concerned. Yes, concerned. Janet reached across the table, her manicured fingers stopping just short of touching mine. Mark tells me you've been emotional lately, asking strange questions, having trouble sleeping. My eyes snapped to Mark. He had the decency to look away. I'm fine, I said, standing abruptly. I should check on Ryan. Sit down, Eleanor. Janet's command cracked like a whip. We're not finished. For the first time in 15 years, I looked at my mother-in-law. Really looked at her. Behind the designer clothes and perfect makeup, I saw something predatory in her eyes. Actually, we are. I started clearing plates, my movements mechanical. I have to call my mother's nurse about tomorrow's schedule. Mark stood, blocking my path to the kitchen. About that, I think we should skip visiting Susan tomorrow. The company's having a dinner, and I need you there. Mother's already agreed to watch Ryan. Already agreed? The plates clattered as I set them down. When exactly did you plan all this? This morning, he said smoothly. When you were too busy to ask about my day. Janet's chair scraped back. I should go. Eleanor clearly isn't in a state to have a rational discussion. She kissed Mark's cheek, then turned to me. Do think about what we've said, dear. Everyone can see you're drowning. After she left, Mark and I stood in silence, the remains of dinner growing cold between us. You told your mother I've been emotional. My voice sounded distant, even to myself. He stepped closer, that familiar cologne making my stomach turn. I'm worried about you. We all are. Don't be. I moved past him, shoulder brushing his chest. I'm seeing things very clearly now. His hand caught my arm. What's that supposed to mean? I smiled, and for the first time it felt like Janet's. Nothing, dear. Nothing at all. Lily's coffee had gone cold, but her eyes remained hot with anger as I showed her Mark's company statements I'd found hidden in his home office. These numbers don't match what he reported last quarter, she said, tapping the paper with a manicured nail. Not even close. The cafe around us hummed with afternoon activity, providing perfect cover for this conversation. I'd chosen it specifically because it was across town, far from Janet's network of spies. I know, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And look at the dates. Lily's breath caught. The day before your mother's surgery, when he said he couldn't be there because of that emergency board meeting. He was in Phoenix. The words tasted bitter. With someone named Olivia. A text lit up my phone. Janet, again. I turned it face down without reading it. Have you confronted him? Lily asked. What's the point? He'll just tell me I'm being paranoid. That's his favorite word lately. I wrapped my hands around my cup, seeking warmth that wasn't there. Besides, he's got Janet convinced I'm having some sort of breakdown. That manipulative bit. Eleanor? My heart stopped. That voice, I hadn't heard it in 15 years, but I'd know it anywhere. Derek stood beside our table, looking exactly like he had in high school, just with touches of grey at his temples. His presence felt like a punch to the gut. I thought that was you, he said, smiling that same crooked smile. "How's Mark?" Lily's eyes darted between us. She knew our history. The high school sweetheart Mark had saved me from, according to Janet's version of events. "He's fine," I managed. "How are you?" "Just made partner at Hamilton and Reed." He gestured to the papers on the table. "Actually, we're handling the audit for Mark's company." The world tilted sideways. "You're what?" "Small world, right?" His expression shifted, becoming more serious. "Listen, Eleanor." My phone buzzed again. This time I looked. A text from Ryan's school. "I have to go," I said, standing so quickly I nearly knocked over my coffee. "Ryan's sick." Derek caught my arm as I moved past him. "We should talk about the audit." I pulled away. "I can't." Lily gathered the papers, shoving them in my bag. "I'll drive you." The ride to Ryan's school was silent until Lily finally spoke. "That wasn't a coincidence, was it? Derek showing up?" "I don't know." My head was spinning. Nothing makes sense anymore. Ryan was pale when we picked him up, but not from illness. "Mom," he whispered as we walked to the car, "Grandma Janet came to school today. She talked to my teacher about you." My steps faltered. "What?" "She said you're not well, that sometimes you might say strange things." His voice cracked. "Are you sick like Grandma Susan?" The parking lot swam before my eyes. Lily's hand found my shoulder, steadying me. "Your mother's fine," she told Ryan firmly. "Sometimes grown-ups just disagree about things." Back home, I tucked Ryan into bed with actual fever now, probably from stress. As I closed his door, voices drifted up from downstairs. "She's becoming unstable, Mark." Janet's voice, in my house, again. First the paranoid accusations, now she's meeting with her ex-boyfriend. Olivia saw them together. My blood turned to ice. Olivia. The name from the Phoenix receipts. "Keep your voice down," Mark hissed. "Ryan's upstairs." "We need to act now before she ruins everything. I've already spoken to Dr. Phillips about getting her evaluated." I must have made a sound because they both looked up. Mark's face showed genuine surprise. Janet's showed something else. Satisfaction. "Eleanor, dear," she purred. "We were just discussing—" "Get out!" My voice was steel. "Now, honey," Mark started, using his client voice again. "Mother's just concerned. Get out." I descended the stairs slowly, deliberately. "Both of you." Janet drew herself up. "This is exactly what we're talking about. These emotional outbursts." "I know about Phoenix," I said quietly. "I know about Olivia. I know about the audit. And Derek, he's handling it now. Isn't that interesting?" The color drained from Mark's face. Janet's hand flew to her throat. "So yes," I continued, reaching the bottom step. "Get out of my house, or the next conversation I have with Derek won't be about old times." They left, but Janet's parting smile told me this wasn't over. As I locked the door behind them, my phone buzzed one final time. A text from Derek. "We really need to talk. There's more you should know." I stared at the message, feeling something shift inside me. The time for being a victim was over. Now I needed to become something else entirely. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before me as I rushed toward my mother's room. Susan's nurse had called during my meeting with Derek, cutting short his revelations about Mark's company. I found her struggling to breathe, her usually strong hands trembling as they clutched the bedsheets. "Eleanor," she wheezed, "Janet was here." My blood froze. "When?" "Just before." She gestured weakly at the monitors beside her bed. "She wanted to talk about Mark, about you." The steady beeping of machines filled the silence as I checked her medication chart. Numbers didn't add up, again, just like Mark's financial statements. "What did she say?" "She thinks—" Susan's breath caught. "She thinks you're unstable. Wanted my permission for something. I wouldn't." The door opened behind me. Mark stood there, Janet hovering at his shoulder like a dark shadow. "I called them," the nurse explained, slipping past them. "As next of kin." "I'm her next of kin," I snapped. Janet's lips curved into that familiar serpentine smile. "Actually, dear, Mark has medical power of attorney now. For both you and Susan. The room tilted. That's impossible. You signed it last month, Mark said softly. Remember? With the insurance papers. Memory flashed. A stack of documents. Mark's gentle insistence. My distracted signature while worried about Ryan's parent-teacher conference. Dr. Phillips thinks your mother's condition is affecting your judgment, Janet continued. The stress, the paranoia, it's all connected. Susan's monitor beeped faster. Eleanor didn't. I never. Mother, please, I whispered, gripping her hand. Save your strength. Get out, Susan managed, glaring at Janet. Both of you. Mark stepped forward. Susan, we're only trying to. I said get out. The force of her words triggered a coughing fit. The nurse returned with Dr. Phillips, a man I'd never seen before. His eyes held no warmth as he reviewed the charts. Mrs. Harrison, he addressed me, perhaps we should step outside and discuss your mother's care. And yours. I'm not leaving her. Eleanor. Mark's hand found my shoulder, heavy with false concern. Think of Ryan. Think of how this behavior affects him. My behavior? I turned to face him fully. You mean like questioning missing funds? Like asking about Phoenix? His fingers dug into my flesh. You're proving our point. Mrs. Harrison, Dr. Phillips interrupted, your husband mentions you've been experiencing paranoid delusions. Ask Derek at Hamilton and Reed about delusions, I shot back. Ask him about the audit. Mark's grip tightened painfully. You've been talking to Derek? A new voice cut through the tension. She has. Lily stood in the doorway, phone in hand. And I've been recording everything since I got here. Janet's composure cracked. You can't. Can't what? Lily stepped inside. Document a conversation or prevent medical manipulation? This is a private family matter, Janet hissed. Exactly. Lily's smile was razor sharp. That's why I called Eleanor's father. He's flying in tonight. You remember him, right, Janet? The federal judge? The room went silent except for the steady beep of Susan's monitor. Mark's hand fell away from my shoulder. We should discuss this elsewhere, Dr. Phillips suggested, suddenly less certain. Yes, I agreed. We should. After my father's legal team reviews those power of attorney documents, and the hospital records, and Mark's company audit. Janet recovered first. You're making a mistake. No, Susan's voice was weak but clear. She's finally seeing clearly. They left, taking their false concern and veiled threats with them. Lily stayed by the door, still recording as Dr. Phillips hurried down the hall after them. Your father's not really coming, is he? Susan asked once we were alone. No. I smoothed her blanket, hands shaking. But they don't know that. Clever girl. She squeezed my fingers. Now, tell me about Derek and this audit. Later. I checked her oxygen levels. You need rest. Eleanor. Her grip tightened. Listen to me. Janet didn't just come to talk today. She wanted access to my estate planning documents. Asked about my safety deposit box. My heart stopped. The one with evidence of what really happened at Mark's last company. She closed her eyes. The real reason they moved here. Lily stepped closer. I'm still recording. I looked between them. My best friend with her phone, my mother with her secrets, and thought about the flash drive Derek had tried to show me earlier. Keep recording, I said. I think we're finally getting to the truth. The safety deposit box key felt impossibly heavy in my palm as I followed the bank manager down the sterile hallway. Behind me, Olivia's heels clicked against marble floors. Janet's supposedly loyal friend, now unexpectedly my ally. I should have told you years ago, she said softly. When Mark first started working with Janet to push out the old board members. The manager unlocked the outer door, leaving us in the viewing room. I waited until his footsteps faded before speaking. Why now? Olivia's carefully maintained facade cracked. Because Janet's planning to do to you what she did to Mark's first wife. The key slipped from my fingers, clattering against the metal table. His what? You didn't know. It wasn't a question. Of course you didn't. Janet made sure those records disappeared before your marriage. My phone buzzed. Another message from Mark. I'd been ignoring them since leaving the hospital, each one growing increasingly desperate. The latest read, "Come home now, we need to talk about Ryan." "They're using my son as leverage," I said, voice hollow. Olivia nodded. "Janet's specialty. She'll convince the court you're unstable, unfit, just like she did with Rachel." The name hit like a physical blow. Rachel? Mark's first wife, the one who supposedly had a nervous breakdown after embezzling company funds. Olivia's laugh was bitter. The perfect cover story for what really happened. My hand shook as I fitted the key into the box. Inside lay a USB drive and a stack of documents, Susan's insurance against the day she knew would come. Janet visited Rachel in the hospital, Olivia continued, right before she signed away her rights. Her fortune, everything. The same hospital where Janet had tried to access my mother's records, where she'd arranged for that doctor to evaluate me. My phone buzzed again. A message from Lily. "Ryan's safe with me. Janet showed up at school again. Don't go home." The documents in my hand suddenly came into sharp focus. Bank statements, emails, photos. Evidence of a pattern stretching back years before I met Mark. "How many others?" I asked. 3 companies, 3 wives. "You're not special, Eleanor. You're just the latest target." The truth settled like ice in my veins. Every criticism, every subtle undermining, every orchestrated failure. It hadn't been personal. It had been practice. My phone lit up with Mark's face. This time, I answered. "Where are you?" His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "With your past," I replied, "and your pattern." A sharp intake of breath. Then, "Whatever Olivia's told you." "Rachel says hello." The line went dead. Olivia touched my arm. "We should go. Janet has people at the bank." As if summoned by her words, voices echoed from the hallway. I recognized Janet's commanding tone, the manager's apologetic murmur. "The back exit," Olivia whispered, gesturing to a service door. "I'll stall them." I hesitated. "Why are you helping me?" "Because 20 years ago, I helped them destroy Rachel. I can't watch it happen again." The voices grew closer. I shoved everything into my bag, heart pounding. "Eleanor," Janet's saccharine voice carried through the door. "Darling, we're worried about you. Mark says you're not well." I backed toward the exit, watching Olivia straighten her shoulders and arrange her features into a mask of concern. She'd fooled them for 2 decades. She could buy me 5 minutes. "Tell Mark," I said quietly, "that Rachel kept copies." Understanding flickered in Olivia's eyes as she nodded. I slipped through the service door just as the main one opened. "Oh, Janet," I heard Olivia say, her voice breaking perfectly. "Thank goodness you're here. Eleanor was saying such strange things." The service corridor led to a back alley where Derek waited in his car, engine running. Another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. "Ready?" he asked as I slid into the passenger seat. My phone buzzed one final time. A text from Mark. "You have no idea what you're doing." I thought about Rachel, about Janet's other victims, about the carefully constructed cage they'd been building around me for years. "Actually," I said, "I finally do." Derek pulled away from the curb as Janet burst out of the bank, phone to her ear. In the rearview mirror, I watched her figure grow smaller, her power diminishing with every block we put between us. The game was changing, and this time, I knew all the players. The hospital room's fluorescent lights flickered as Susan's monitors screamed their warning. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching nurses rush past me while Mark's latest threat echoed in my head. "One signature, Eleanor. That's all it takes to end this." "Code blue," someone called out. "Clear the room." Derek pulled me back into the hallway as medical staff swarmed around my mother. Through the glass, I watched them work, their movements urgent and precise. "She knew," I whispered. "She knew everything about Rachel, about the others, and she still protected me." "Eleanor," Mark's voice cut through the chaos. He stood at the end of the hallway, Janet hovering behind him like a dark sentinel. "We need to talk about Ryan." My phone vibrated, a message from Lily. "They're trying to get emergency custody. Janet's judge friend fast-tracked it." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "Where's my son?" "Safe," Janet answered, stepping forward. "Away from your increasingly erratic behavior." "What she means," Mark added softly, approaching with his hands raised like I was a cornered animal, "is that Ryan's staying with us until you get help. Dr. Phillips has already prepared the commitment papers." The monitors in Susan's room suddenly went silent. The doctor emerged, his face grave. "Mrs. Harrison?" "No." The word tore from my throat. "No, I need to speak to her. She has to tell them." "Tell them what?" Mark was beside me now, his cologne suffocating. "About your conspiracy theories, your paranoid delusions about Rachel." "Rachel was real." My voice shook. "Just like the missing funds are real. Just like the voices you hear at night," Janet interrupted smoothly. "The ones that keep you up, making you spy on your loving husband." Derek stepped between us. "Back off, Janet." "Derek?" Mark's smile was razor sharp. "Still trying to save her after all these years. Tell me, does your law firm know you're sleeping with a client's unstable wife?" "What?" The accusation hit like a physical blow. "The hotel receipts," Mark continued. "The late-night meetings. Did you think we wouldn't find out?" Derek's face drained of color. "Eleanor, I can explain, but I was already backing away from all of them. My mind racing through every conversation, every secret meeting. Had Derek been working with them all along? Was this entire thing an elaborate trap?" "Security," Janet called out, her voice carrying that perfect note of concern. "My daughter-in-law is having another episode." Two guards appeared at the end of the hall. Behind them, Dr. Phillips approached with a syringe. "Just to help you calm down," he said soothingly. I turned to run, but Mark caught my arm. His grip was gentle, loving. The perfect concerned husband restraining his troubled wife. "Think about Ryan," he whispered. "Do you want him to remember his mother being dragged away? Or do you want to walk out of here with dignity?" Through the glass, I could see them covering Susan's body. All her evidence, all her secrets, dying with her. "The choice is simple," Janet added. "Sign the papers, get the help you need, or lose everything, including Ryan." The guards were closer now. Dr. Phillips uncapped the syringe. "Time to decide," Mark said softly. "Are you going to be Rachel, or are you going to be smart?" In that moment, I saw it all clearly. The perfect trap they'd constructed, fight back and prove I was unstable. Give in and lose everything. Either way, they won. My phone buzzed one final time. A message from an unknown number. "Rachel didn't die. She survived. And so will you." The guards reached for me as Dr. Phillips stepped forward with his syringe. Mark's grip remained gentle, loving, the concerned husband until the very end. I looked into his eyes, searching for any trace of the man I'd married. There was nothing there but calculated emptiness. "You're right," I said quietly. "I need to be smart." Janet's triumphant smile appeared just as I drove my elbow into Mark's solar plexus. He doubled over, his grip loosening just enough. I ran. Behind me, Janet's controlled facade finally cracked. "Stop her!" But I was already through the emergency exit, alarms blaring in my wake. They'd taken everything, my mother, my son, my life. But they hadn't taken my truth. And now, finally, I knew exactly how to use it. The annual shareholders' meeting buzzed with artificial pleasantries and expensive perfume. I stood in the shadows of the hotel ballroom, watching Mark work the crowd with his practiced charm. Janet floated nearby, her red dress a warning signal. "Ready?" Olivia appeared at my elbow, clutching her tablet. "Is she here?" "Front row." Olivia nodded toward a woman with silver-streaked hair. "Rachel flew in this morning. My mother's USB drive felt heavy in my pocket. 15 years of evidence waiting for this moment." Mark took the podium, adjusting his tie, his tell when he's nervous. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin..." Actually, I stepped into the light, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. "I'd like to say something first." Janet's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Mark's smile flickered but held. "Eleanor," he said smoothly. This isn't the time for... For what? The truth? I moved closer, each step deliberate. About Phoenix, about Rachel, or about what really happened to my mother. The crowd stirred. Rachel leaned forward, her face a mirror of my own determination. Security, Janet called out, but Olivia was faster. Nobody moves, she announced, tapping her tablet. The screens behind Mark filled with documents. Not until everyone sees exactly where their money's been going. Mark's facade cracked. These are confidential, like the offshore accounts. I was at the podium now, close enough to smell his cologne. Or the falsified audit reports, or maybe like Rachel's commitment papers. She was unstable, Janet cut in, moving toward us. Just like you're being unstable now. Where's Ryan, Eleanor? Does he know his mother's having another breakdown? Ryan's safe, Lily's voice rang out from the back. With his real grandmother's sister and the police, Mark lunged for the podium's laptop, but I was ready. Looking for this? I held up the USB drive. Susan made copies, lots of them. Dead women are clever that way. You don't understand, he hissed, desperation replacing charm. I did it for us, for our family. Family? Rachel stood, her voice steady. Is that what you told the others too, Mark? The room erupted in whispers. Janet's perfectly maintained composure slipped. This is ridiculous, she announced. These women are clearly disturbed. Dr. Phillips can confirm. Dr. Phillips confessed this morning. Derek stepped forward, legal papers in hand. About the falsified psychiatric evaluations. About all of it. Mark's hands gripped the podium. Whatever they're paying you. They're not paying me anything, Derek interrupted. But the SEC is very interested in what I have to say. Cameras flashed as federal agents appeared at every exit. Janet's face went ash white. It's over, I said quietly. The money, the manipulation, all of it. You stupid girl. Janet's voice trembled with rage. You have no idea what you've done, after everything we gave you. Gave me. My laugh felt foreign. You took everything. My marriage, my mother, my son. I took nothing, Mark snarled, mask finally shattering. You were nothing before me, just like Rachel was nothing, just like... His words cut off as Rachel stepped onto the stage, calm and regal. Tell them about Phoenix, Mark. Tell them what really happened to the last woman who knew too much. The room held its breath. In the silence, I could hear Mark's world crumbling. This isn't... He started, then stopped, looking to Janet for rescue. But Janet was already backing away, her predator's instincts sensing the trap closing. The truth, I said, turning to face the crowd, is in these documents. Every transaction, every forged signature, every falsified report. But most importantly, I met Rachel's eyes. Every victim's story, starting with Phoenix. You can't prove... Mark grabbed my arm, but security was already moving. Actually, Rachel smiled, we can. Dead women might be clever, Mark, but surviving ones are dangerous. As they led Mark and Janet away, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction. Only a hollow echo where 15 years of lies used to live. Eleanor? Lily appeared with my phone. Ryan wants to talk to you. I took the phone, my son's voice washing over me like absolution. Behind me, Rachel spoke quietly with the FBI, while Olivia distributed USB drives to the board members. The truth was finally free, and so were we. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving me alone with the echo of the judge's decision. Mark and Janet's sentencing had been swift, clinical, like excising a tumor. I gathered my papers, fingers brushing against Susan's old safety deposit box key. You didn't tell them everything. Rachel's voice carried across the empty benches. She moved closer, her heels clicking against marble. About Phoenix, about what really happened to the others. Some truths aren't meant for courtrooms. I stood, facing the woman who'd blazed this trail before me. Some are just for us. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Derek called, said you turned down the board position. It was never about power. My voice sounded stronger than I felt. Besides, the company belongs to the survivors now. All of them. Through the courthouse windows, I watched Janet being led to a waiting prison transport. Her red dress had been replaced by orange, her perfect posture finally broken. Mark was already gone, whisked away to begin his sentence. "Mom?" Ryan appeared in the doorway with Lily, his backpack clutched tight. "Are we going home now?" Home. Not the pristine cage Mark had built, but the new apartment overlooking the park. A place without secrets. "Actually," Rachel said, "I thought we might all get dinner. There's someone you should meet." She hesitated. "The woman who sent you that text about me surviving. She was wife number 1. My breath caught. "There are more of us. Many more. We've been watching, waiting. Susan wasn't the only one keeping records." Ryan tugged my sleeve. "Can we get pizza?" The simple question broke something loose inside me. A laugh that felt like crying, or maybe the other way around. "Pizza sounds perfect," I said, ruffling his hair. "But first, we need to make one stop." The cemetery was quiet this time of day. Susan's grave, still fresh, bore none of the elaborate decorations Janet had insisted on for the funeral. Just a simple stone with words I'd chosen. She protected truth with silence and love with strength. I placed her old key on the headstone. "You can rest now, Mum. We all can. Eleanor." Derek's voice surprised me. He stood at a respectful distance, holding a familiar flash drive. "There's something you should know. That you were investigating Mark long before we met at the cafe." I didn't turn around. "Or that you orchestrated our reunion." "Both." He moved closer, but not too close. "And neither. The investigation was real, but seeing you again, that wasn't orchestrated. Some karma works on its own schedule." Ryan wandered between the headstones, giving us space with a child's instinctive understanding. "I thought about telling you," Derek continued. "Every time we met, every document I showed you, but you needed to find your own way out. Like Rachel did. Like all of them did." He placed the flash drive beside the key. "There's one file you haven't seen, about Janet's first husband, Mark's father." The pieces clicked into place. She did this before. History repeats until someone breaks the chain. He stepped back. "The file's yours if you want it, or we can let it stay buried." I stared at the flash drive, feeling the weight of more secrets, more vengeance. Then I looked at Ryan, innocent among the shadows of our past. "Some chains," I said quietly, "are broken by leaving them behind." I left the drive where it lay, next to the key that had unlocked my freedom. Susan would understand. Rachel waited by the cemetery gate with Lily, their shadows long in the setting sun. Beyond them, I could see other women gathering, survivors I hadn't known existed, each carrying their own story of escape. "Ready?" Lily asked as I approached. I looked back one last time at Susan's grave, at the pieces of the past I was choosing to leave behind. The truth had set us free, but it was our choice to stay that way. "Yes," I said, taking Ryan's hand. "I'm ready for pizza." We walked away together, a different kind of family forged in the ashes of the one that had tried to destroy us. Behind us, the key and flash drive gleamed in the fading light. Artifacts of a battle finally, completely won. Some victories, after all, are measured not in what we take, but in what we choose to leave behind.